Our recap begins with a group of students bullying a girl because she's a little overweight, which completely destroys her self-confidence. Meanwhile, their cruelty goes so far that they secretly pour a urine test sample into her juice while they keep mocking her, not knowing that years later, someone will appear to defend her and make them regret everything they did. However, without spoiling what's coming, let's jump straight into the main events. Then the series opens with a body lying on top of a car, and despite the heavy rain, there's still a huge amount of blood around it, with the traces not washed away because of the countless stab wounds all over the body. At that same moment, our lead, Anna, is clearly shaken as she runs into her room and hides, with bruises visible on her face. Then, as soon as she catches her breath, she rushes to the fridge and drinks a bunch of pills, trying to forget what just happened, which is still unclear, and whether or not she has anything to do with the crime we saw a moment ago. Meanwhile, she starts washing her hands, gathers a pile of books and magazines, then throws them into the trash. And from a distance, she notices a TV ad featuring a news anchor she clearly recognizes, someone she has an old score to settle with. Later on, the next day, she goes to the dentist, who tells her she has two options: either remove the tooth or treat it, then advises her that if he were in her place, he would choose treatment. However, she coldly replies, "The tooth that hurts me gets thrown away." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, we're introduced to Detective Jack, Anna's ex-husband, as he heads out with his partner, Detective Sean, after being informed of the victim's name and the fact that she's a well-known figure in their town. Yet Jack seems completely uninterested, casually eating a banana, unlike Sean, who's clearly taking it seriously. Then, as soon as they arrive, a police officer tells them this is the most brutal case he's seen in all his years of service in that town. However, Jack still shows a strange sense of indifference. Meanwhile, at that exact time, Anna returns to the news website where she used to work before quitting some time ago. And since she's extremely talented, everyone is impressed by her sudden comeback. From the very first moment she steps into the editor-in-chief's office, she asks to be sent out as a field reporter, which completely surprises him since she's known as a highly gifted writer. So he tries to talk her out of it and convince her to forget the idea. However, Anna has a personal motive and a specific case she wants to cover, so she tells him about the crime we saw at the beginning of the recap. Then, when he tells her that no one will care anyway and asks who she even is in this town, she replies, "Listen to me, the victim is white and the attack was extremely violent. Meanwhile, this story will send the website's views through the roof, and besides, I'll be the one covering it, so the reporting will definitely be different," eventually managing to convince him. What's even stranger, however, is that she requests a specific photographer by name, and when he asks why that particular guy, she casually says she heard he's good at his job, which makes him even more confused, since the photographer's wife works with them and has never once recommended him for any assignment. Still, in the end, he agrees to her request. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, Jack gathers all the officers and warns them that no information is allowed to leak and no media coverage should be permitted, because they must respect the victim's personal relationships, especially since she's married to a powerful figure. However, what no one can quite understand is why he insists that her husband must not be informed at all right now. Then he justifies it by saying that, as investigators, they are the ones who should tell him in person. Later on, when Anna arrives at the scene and greets the photographer, we see Jack and Sean after they've discovered footprints. Yet Jack explains that they don't mean much, since this is a forest and dozens of people walk through here every day. Therefore, they need solid physical evidence, something much stronger than that. Then, when she points out that all the footprints show signs of bleeding, he snaps and asks how she knows the blood belongs to the victim. At that moment, she answers that the footprints were barefoot and there was a shoe print right next to them. However, before the argument can continue, they suddenly realize that reporters and media crews are already there making a scene. And since Sean doesn't know how to deal with them, Jack steps in himself, answers a few random questions quickly, then leaves. Meanwhile, Anna keeps giving him strange looks the entire time, and just before he leaves, she calls out to him and asks, "You don't know the victim, do you, Mr. Detective? I mean, she's not a friend of yours or anything." Then he turns around at the sound of her voice, which he clearly recognizes very well. Later on, when she sits down with the photographer, he asks how she knew there was some kind of relationship between the detective and the victim. So she answers in a very clever way, explaining that she only asked a question and never stated it as a fact. However, it's obvious that Anna is trying to get closer to the photographer, which we can tell from the way she looks at him. Meanwhile, she explains her absence from work work by saying she was writing a book. And during their conversation, we learned that Anna's son died some time ago. And since then, she has completely cut herself off from everyone who used to know her. Then she starts provoking the photographer even more and trying to sabotage his relationship with his wife, asking him how it feels to be married to a famous star, while pressing him with her words to make him feel like he's just the husband, for example. When she reminds him that fans are around her everywhere and they always end up asking only you to take their pictures. Then she adds that she finishes her broadcast at 11. After that, she has meetings, which means she usually gets home around 1 in the morning or even later. In other words, not before that. Meanwhile, you're already asleep. Yeah, that's probably why you still don't have kids. And by the way, she even makes 5 times your monthly salary. Then, less than 2 hours later, we see Jack sneaking up to her hotel room door and realizing the photographer is inside with her. Suddenly, seconds later, she opens the door and finds Jack running down the stairs, so she decides to run after him immediately. Then, when the photographer asks her how she knows the detective, she replies, "I know him extremely well." Meanwhile, Jack goes outside and finds her getting into her car, and it looks like both of them are trying to beat each other there. However, Jack arrives first because she finds him already at her mother's house, where as soon as her mother sees her, she's overjoyed, since it's been a long time since Anna even answered her phone calls. Then Anna and Jack stand face to face, and she asks him who the victim is and why he doesn't want to let her get involved in the case. And even though she already knows very well who it is, she still wants to hear the name from him. So he tells her it's Rachel, your school friend. Then she explains that they were never close enough for him to describe them as friends, while subtly hinting that he's deliberately keeping her away so she won't expose the killer before he does, assuming he even wants to expose him at all. While they're talking, her mother suddenly interrupts and asks when Anna arrived, looking genuinely confused, which shocks Anna. Then she looks at Jack with sadness and steps outside to talk to him, where she learns that her mother has developed Alzheimer's and that Jack has been the one taking care of her. However, her mother has refused to see any doctor at all. And through their conversation, we also learn from Jack that Anna suddenly disappeared from both his life and her mother's life. Then Jack tells her that because of her, he was fired from his job, since he spent all that time searching for her. And it's clear that a lot has happened in Anna's life, and that she's only just come back after managing to regain her strength. And judging by her expression, it hasn't been easy at all. Later, after Jack leaves, she sits alone in her mother's house, going through old memories, and she finds a video camera with clips of her and her school friends, including Rachel and another girl named Helen. And it becomes clear that Rachel loved painting her nails, both her own and other people's. Meanwhile, Anna notices that she's still keeping a fabric bracelet and can't even remember which friend it belonged to. Later on, at Jack's house, we see his new wife standing in front of the news, seeing Anna for the first time since she disappeared. And she's shocked to find Anna delivering exclusive news about the same murder Jack is investigating. Meanwhile, Jack is stunned when he hears her revealing information about the victim, even though no one is supposed to know it yet. So, he rushes over to her place, bangs on her door in anger, and demands to know what she's trying to do. However, she answers his question with another question, asking why he doesn't want anyone to know, and why he still hasn't questioned the people closest to the victim, clearly trying to trap him into revealing who he has already questioned. Then she's shocked to learn that he hasn't even gone to the husband yet, even though the autopsy results are already out. However, he's furious with her, and before leaving, he threatens that if she interferes with his work, he'll arrest her. Then, the next day, he goes to the forensic lab and sees a fabric bracelet the medical examiner found tied around the victim's neck, which turns out to be the exact same bracelet Anna found earlier in her box of memories. So right away, Jack takes Sean with him and they go to Rachel's husband, who is still in shock. And through his answers, he explains that Rachel was a bit sadistic. However, he still loved her because she was full of energy and life. Meanwhile, he admits that he knew she was cheating on him, yet he insists it wasn't with one specific person. Then he adds that even though anyone else in his place would probably be relieved, he loved her and still can't believe he'll never see her again. During this awkward conversation, he shows them the security camera footage, and at that point, it becomes clear that he went out that night with his dog. And since it was raining, it was almost the exact same time Rachel's life ended. However, he justifies it by saying that his dog is used to going out when it rains because that's his favorite time. Meanwhile, the cameras also show Rachel leaving the house while talking on the phone. So when they ask who she was speaking to, he explains that he and his wife agreed not to interfere in each other's privacy, saying that respect is the most important thing in relationships. Anyway, in the end, he tells them that he keeps calling her phone just to hear the recorded voicemail message in her voice. So Jack orders him not to call again, because that way the phone battery will die before they manage to find it. Then comes the real shock, as the husband casually tells them that Rachel was killed with 40 stab wounds, and that she was raped afterward, which means the person who did this must have been extremely angry with her. At that moment, Jack becomes suspicious and asks how he knows that, since the autopsy report hasn't been released yet. Then the husband drops a bomb and tells them that a reporter named Anna came to see him earlier that day, even hinting that she was more active than they were, saying she showed up at 6:30 in the morning. And even though he was determined not to talk, she was very persistent and skilled. At that point, Jack gets worried that she might find out things before he does. So he asks if she questioned him about anything other than what they just asked. And the husband answers yes. She asked who the last person Rachel told me she was going to meet was, which makes Jack almost furious at how obvious that question was and how he himself didn't think to ask it. So he immediately gets the name and decides to go see that friend, whose name turns out to be Helen. Meanwhile, back at the news office, inside the editor-in-chief's office, he's sitting in front of a screen with the rising star, the photographer's wife, whom Anna specifically requested and got close to, and right in the middle of him, praising Anna's skills. The anchor replies, "That's exactly why she asked for my husband in particular." And from her looks, it's clear that there's already serious tension between her and Anna. Then she confirms that Anna is deliberately getting close to her husband after seeing what's happening behind the scenes. And we even catch Anna throwing a victorious look straight into the camera. Later on, when we go back to Jack, we see him asking Sean, before she gets in the car with him, to go and take photos of Rachel's house from different angles. Meanwhile, he calls Rachel's friend, Helen, and only her office assistant answers. At the same time, Helen is on the phone with Rachel's husband, warning him that she's scared and terrified. However, he tries to calm her down and tells her to relax, saying that in a few days, her phone will stop working from how much he keeps calling and no one will be able to track it. But Helen answers that she's innocent of everything they did, which makes him snap at her and warn her that the detective will call and that she must answer. Then he hangs up and goes back to calling Rachel's phone again. And then we're surprised to discover that Rachel's phone is actually in Jack's car. And suddenly, Sean gets in and finds him extremely nervous. Meanwhile, as for our lead, she goes to Helen's office, where Helen turns out to be a school principal, and we discover it's the same school Anna once attended. Then Anna remembers her first day there with her mother, when she was introduced to Rachel, and she recalls hearing her classmates whispering while walking together, saying, "That's the daughter of the woman who comes to clean our house every Tuesday." And among them was a girl wearing glasses who looked at her with pure contempt. Meanwhile, we quickly cut back to Jack, who is so tense that he can barely control himself while driving, especially when Sean starts explaining the nature of the crime and confirms that the victim was not raped at all, and that whatever happened was consensual, with the stabbing coming afterward. Then Jack feels like the case is finally starting to make sense, yet it's still unclear why he's this nervous in the first place, except that he's desperate to reach Helen by any means necessary. As we already know, Anna gets there first and goes inside to talk to Helen. Then she asks her who exactly Rachel was going to meet. However, Helen replies with a question of her own, asking how she can be so sure that Rachel was even meeting someone in the first place. Then Anna explains that Rachel's car was parked deep in the middle of the forest, which clearly means she did not just drive there by accident or stop halfway for no reason. Then she tells her that she actually has a specific name in mind and that she strongly suspects that person, and she wants Helen to help her confirm it. However, Helen responds in a very sly way, saying that she also trusts someone in particular, but she is not going to say the name right now. Then Anna points out that by doing this, she is basically hiding information from the police. But Helen, still very confident, asks her what exactly she is hiding and whether any officer has even questioned her. Then she steps closer and tells her, "Why don't you ask Jack?" Which makes it clear that there is a secret between all of them that they are keeping hidden. At that moment, Anna makes an excuse that she has been away from her mother for too long and left her alone. However, Helen responds coldly and without any mercy, telling her that this is still better than leaving a dead child alone in another city. And just as Anna is about to reply and understand what she really means, Helen's assistant suddenly calls her and informs her that Detective Jack Harper has been trying to reach her several times. Then Helen looks at our heroine with a victorious and cunning smile. And after Anna leaves, we see Jack at work with with Shan, where he keeps trying to avoid her questions and instead shifts the suspicion more toward Rachel's husband. Then he asks her what would make her husband keep calling Rachel unless he wanted something from her. And if his phone was about to die, why would he insist on calling her specifically? At that point, Shan starts to believe that her husband could actually be the killer. So she leaves and goes back to reviewing the rest of the evidence. Meanwhile, Jack goes inside, calls the service provider, and tells them that he had previously requested phone surveillance on Rachel's number, but now he wants the request canceled. Then he takes Rachel's phone and tries to unlock it. However, he fails, and suddenly he realizes there is only one solution left. But before we find out what it is, we cut to Anna, standing in front of the house, remembering the moment she told Jack she was pregnant, with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, Sean is at the office examining the shoe evidence from the crime scene. And at the same time, we realize that the exact same shoes are actually inside Jack's house. Then we finally discover the solution Jack resorts to, which is going to the morgue and trying to distract the employee there by telling him that he is looking for his wedding ring because his wife is angry with him and they had a big argument at home. Then he convinces him that the ring must have fallen here without him noticing. And while the employee is not paying attention, Jack opens the freezer and pulls out Rachel's body just to unlock her phone using facial recognition. And after he succeeds, he is shocked to discover that Helen had been sending many messages to Rachel and that she knew everything about Rachel's relationship with him. And through the chat, it becomes clear that there was blackmail happening from both sides, whether from Rachel or from Jack. Meanwhile, we see Helen calling the FBI. And until now, we still do not know how Jack will react to that. Then we cut back to Anna as she remembers the old days and her relationship with Rachel and Helen back when she had just transferred to a new school, where we see them staring at a slightly overweight girl, just like we saw at the very beginning of the summary. And they start bullying her, especially Rachel, who says she does not like girls who are not confident. Then they convince Anna to go talk to her, and she actually does, helping the girl join them, and we later learn that her name is Mary. Then while they are sitting together, Rachel deliberately spills Mary's juice so she can offer her own drink. And when Mary refuses, Rachel embarrasses her until she finally drinks it, only to discover that it's actually Rachel's urine. Then Rachel starts yelling loudly, saying, "The fat girl drank my pee," while Anna looks at Mary, trying to explain that she truly had no idea what they were planning to do. However, Mary leaves them all behind, while Anna watches her with sad eyes, full of regret over her friendship with Rachel and Helen. Then we hear someone saying that Rachel deserved what happened to her because she was a man-stealer. Meanwhile, Jack is at home going through Rachel's phone and discovers many disgusting videos involving her husband and several other men. Then he goes downstairs for dinner, and his sister asks him whether he was with Rachel, and we learn that she has been her friend for a very long time. Then she accuses him of possibly being the one who killed her because he came home very late that night. However, he reminds her that he is her brother and she should know him better than that. Later that night, Shan calls Jack and tells him about the latest developments she reached after collecting and investigating the evidence. However, Jack becomes extremely irritated by how smart she is and how close she might be to finding out that he was actually with Rachel on the day of the incident. And every time he tries to corner her with a difficult question, he finds that she already has a solid answer prepared until she brings up the shoe prints again. And when he reminds her of what he previously said, that the prints could belong to other people as well, she explains that she lifted every single footprint, tracked down their owners, went to them personally, and confirmed that none of them had any connection to the case. Then Jack slams his hand against the wall without even realizing that he is standing right in front of Helen's house, since he originally wanted to speak to her in private. But what really traps him is when Sean suddenly asks why he went to the morgue looking for his wedding ring, even though he is not wearing one in the first place. So he replies that he sometimes wears it. However, she assures him that he was not wearing it on the day they were at the morgue. And at that point, he does not know what to say, especially when she starts talking to him in a very suspicious tone. Then he tries to justify himself by claiming that the ring was simply in his pocket. After that, he quickly hangs up. Then Shan looks at the photos of the suspects laid out in front of her, and among them, we clearly see Jack's picture. Meanwhile, Jack is extremely furious, and Helen's front door suddenly opens because he unknowingly knocked on it hard while losing control of himself. And when he asks about her, he learns that she is still at school, and usually stays there until late. On the other hand, Sean decides to investigate on her own and starts following Rachel's husband. Then she finds a mask thrown in the trash, and she immediately calls Jack, who at that moment has just bought several plastic bags from the supermarket for a specific purpose that we are about to find out. However, Jack cannot explain what that mask is for, especially since he already saw the videos on Rachel's phone and knows that this kind of thing is part of her twisted behavior. So he is forced to make up an excuse, pretends that the network signal is bad, then hangs up. And now we finally understand why he bought the plastic bags when we see him putting them over his shoes and heading back to the crime scene himself, where he wants to check whether anyone else has been there. And once again, it still does not become clear whether he is the one who killed Rachel or not. But what does become clear is that he manipulated her with love just to lure her in. As for the real reason behind that, we still do not know yet. But sooner or later, it will definitely be revealed. Later on, Jack keeps walking through the forest until he reaches the cemetery, where the guard suddenly stops him at gunpoint. Then Jack tries to defend himself while completely surrendering and explains that he is a police officer and that he is only there to look for more evidence. And the moment he says his name, we realize that the cemetery guard actually knows him. Then Jack turns to him and they greet each other. And during their conversation, Jack learns that there are cameras in the cemetery, so he goes with him to review what happened on the day of the incident. Then he gives him the exact date and time, and the guard zooms in on a young man standing near a specific grave. Then the guard tells him, "You definitely know whose grave this is." And we see tears filling Jack's eyes as he struggles to hold them back. However, he gathers his strength and answers, "Yes, of course I know." And when Jack later stands in front of the grave, we finally discover that it belongs to his infant daughter from Anna. At the same time, Anna is sitting in her car after her TV appearance gets canceled because the original host, who happens to be the cameraman's wife, had an errand to run. So Anna was only meant to be a temporary replacement. But in the end, the errand gets canceled. Then all the pain comes crashing down on Anna, and she remembers the last night she saw her daughter when the baby was actually very sick. And back then, Anna suggested to Jack that maybe they should not go out and should stay with her. However, he convinced her that the baby would be fine and that all kids get sick like that. So they left her with her grandmother and went out, which is exactly why Helen later mocked them by saying that some people left their child behind and went to another city while her own life was already over. Then Anna snaps out of her memories and goes up to her room feeling extremely angry. And after a while, the cameraman comes to apologize to her for what his wife did. So Anna tells him that it is okay and that his wife said she was staying with her sister's kids or her aunt's kids. She cannot quite remember. Then he tells her that neither of them actually has any siblings. And at that moment, Anna realizes that his wife has started to feel jealous of her. And that is why she is trying to hurt her, which means that her plan to get closer to him is working perfectly, even though she never shows it directly. Meanwhile, on the other side, Jack is informed that his mother-in-law had an accident, so he rushes to her and helps get her home safely. With a heavy heart, she speaks to him, revealing that the car accident was nothing compared to what she experiences every day, waking up unable to remember her most cherished memories. Slowly, we begin to understand more about Jack and Anna's relationship, and it shocks us to learn that they are not actually divorced, which becomes clear when Anna asks, "Did you really get divorced like everyone says or not?" He confirms, "No, of course not." And she realizes he still loves her, even though his sister dislikes her. And most of the town assumes his sister is actually his wife, given that no other woman has ever been part of his life. Even Detective Sean assumed the same, which is why she wasn't surprised about the ring, but was puzzled that he wasn't wearing it at all. They agree that he will send a message to Anna to restore what was lost. And Jack sits watching videos of Anna from her early days training at news channels, smiling as he notices she hasn't changed a bit. Exhausted, he finally goes home and falls asleep so deeply that his phone slips from his hand. The next morning, he wakes up to a call from Sean, who's furious and tells him she's called many times, and he's shocked to learn that they've found another body. He rushes to the scene, and on the way is scolded by his superior because it's now clear that a serial killer is active and they haven't been paying proper attention. Jack hasn't even processed all the shocks yet when the biggest surprise hits him. Anna is standing at the crime scene, and this time the victim is Helen. Sean joins Jack as per their professional duties, and after examining the scene, she is ordered not to do anything without informing Jack first and receiving his permission. Anna steps forward, giving him her phone after they checked it near the body. And when he asks why she's there at that moment, she calmly explains that she had an appointment with Helen and arrived to find her in this condition. giving him the exact time so he could verify everything himself. And the first thing she did was call the cameraman to get the scoop. Later, the forensic team clarifies that Helen was killed differently. Her life ended by a cut to the neck with visible bruises, and there's no suspicion of sexual assault. However, the one detail linking both murders, Rachel and Helen, is the fabric bracelet. At that point, Jack realizes that someone could finally be covering their tracks, but he can't believe it, and he confirms again that there is indeed a serial killer leaving the same mark each time. Jack rushes home, and his sister barges in while he's searching through Anna's things, yelling at him, but he shows her the same fabric bracelet and asks whose it is. Naturally, she's shocked that he's making such a fuss over a bracelet, and she tells him that Anna made it for all of them. Meanwhile, at Anna's house, she's sitting with her mother after Jack told her what happened. Anna offers her mother that once her mission here is complete, she will return to travel, and she wants her mother to travel with her to always take care of her, but her mother refuses outright. Meanwhile, Sean is at the office, calling the phone service and urging them to pursue the investigation on Rachel's phone, but the operator informs her that Jack requested to cancel it entirely. Shocked, Sean realizes he is involved in the case and orders the operator to reinstate the request. That same evening, we see her beside Jack at a town meeting where all the townspeople gather. This is Anna's idea to capture the camera's attention and make the people recognize her as the reporter and correspondent who first broke the news. In truth, Anna knows exactly what will happen and that Jack won't be able to answer the townspeople's questions, which forces him to speak himself. Unsure and terrified, the crowd begins accusing him of being incompetent. However, Anna steps onto the stage again, stopping all chaos, calming everyone, and introducing herself, making it clear that she was the first to uncover the news. She shares the two key lessons she's learned in her profession, and in essence, wants to make everyone understand that the killer is either among them or someone they all know, which is why they must be extremely cautious. Suddenly, chaos erupts everywhere, and everyone starts suspecting each other. Fights break out, escalating into physical altercations among the townspeople. Anna is thrilled. She knows that scenes like this will drive millions of views. As she steps outside, Jack's sister confronts her, her tone laced with threat, but Anna calmly tells her that she was the first one suspicious anyway. She asks her where she was at the time of the crime and why she wasn't home. Unfazed, Jack's sister decides to scare Anna and threatens her. "Do you want to be the next victim?" But Anna, confident and composed, replies that she should be the one afraid, as no one truly knows her capabilities. As expected, Jack's sister becomes terrified. Anna gets into her car and sends a message to Jack, asking him to meet her immediately at the waterfalls. Meanwhile, the original news anchor, Jack's wife, calls her husband, furious because Anna scooped her story. She's heading to him within half an hour, clearly annoyed at the competition. We also discover that she held a meeting with Rachel's husband, offering a reward to anyone who could reveal who harmed his wife. Afterward, her husband asks why she's acting this way and trying to steal the spotlight from Anna, and she answers simply that Anna is the one trying to take everything, not her. Meanwhile, Sean reviews photos of students from Helen and Rachel's school days and notices that everyone in the pictures, including Anna, is wearing the same fabric bracelet. Finally, Jack meets Anna in person, and they both accuse each other of Rachel's death. Jack confronts Anna, aware that she saw him with Rachel that night in the car, but swears he didn't harm her. Anna counters, saying he knows it's impossible she would do such a thing, and asks why he chose Rachel specifically. He replies, "Just like you chose the cameraman," reminding us that they are still married, after all. The discussion escalates, turning into a confrontation and a reminder of past pain. Anna reproaches him. He disappeared and left without saying goodbye. She reminds him, "Do you forget what happened? That night, you reassured me and said our daughter was fine. Yet in the end, we found her unwell, and you ignored it." She clarifies that she doesn't blame him or her mother, who was with their daughter that night. Jack interrupts, explaining he wasn't at fault and never forgot, that he chose not to intervene because he thought it was in their daughter's best interest. But what hurts him is that she chose the worst possible moment to leave. He says, "It doesn't matter that you left. What matters is how you left. You didn't even say you wanted to be away." Anna breaks down, realizing he never felt her pain or the suffering over their daughter, which is why she left. Jack finally understands he wronged her and apologizes. The next day, Shan gathers all the evidence and discovers that the last person Rachel contacted was Jack. Presenting her findings to the officers and the sheriff, she asserts that all suspicions point to Anna, revealing she is actually Jack's wife, not his ex. When Jack defends her, Sean grills him with questions. Why did Anna reappear on TV right at the start of the case? Why was she at Helen's crime scene before them? Why was her phone next to the body? And why is she photographed with the same group, Rachel, Helen, and Mary, all wearing the same same bracelet. Jack, frustrated, insists that wearing the bracelet doesn't make her the killer and keeps defending her until he leaves the room. The sheriff orders Sean to gather all evidence as quickly as possible, giving her 48 hours to question Anna's father, hoping to find crucial information. Otherwise, the federal office will take over the case. Sean immediately goes to Anna's father, only to discover that he suffers from Alzheimer's and is unable to provide any useful information. Jack goes straight to Rachel's husband to confront him with the truth. He never really loved Rachel. She was just blackmailing him, and that's why he stayed silent during her affair. He learns the extent of her betrayal, yet he shows no concern at all. Jack presses him. "So you were with her the night of the murder. You're the prime suspect." The husband brushes him off, gets into his car, and tells Jack he's about to be arrested, but couldn't care less, advising him to hire a lawyer because a report will be filed against him immediately. Back at his office, Jack is determined to clear his wife's name, even though he was initially the first to suspect her. At the same time, his wife is with Sean, showing her school photos of her friends. Anna denies ever considering any of them close friends, contrasting what is seen in the memory box videos. When Sean asks how she got into the school on the night of the incident despite the door being locked, Anna explains she has tricks she learned as a student. Sean accuses her of breaking in, but Anna clarifies she didn't damage anything. She just knows how to open the lock. Sean, frustrated, leaves her alone. Jack's sister arrives at the office, worried it might be her turn next, and argues with him. She hints that Anna isn't what he thinks and that she once promised revenge. They're still missing details about that day. Jack then receives a report listing people Rachel was involved with, including the photographer, the news anchor's husband. He goes to confront the photographer, only to be shocked to learn the man has a criminal past for assaulting someone. But the photographer defends himself, explaining that the victim attacked his wife first, and he was just protecting her, albeit forcefully. When Jack comments on his strength, the photographer smirks. "Ask your wife," which infuriates Jack further. Meanwhile, Shan questions Jack's sister about opening the school lock. She admits it was too tricky for her, but Helen, Rachel, and Anna could do it. When asked about Anna, her expression changes. She confirms Anna was there, but mentions someone missing, Mary, who surprisingly became part of their group after the incident with her. Anna, meanwhile, manages to reach the photographer and treats him with ice packs. They agree to go together to a hotel where 2 rooms are booked for work purposes. Sean discovers Rachel's phone is at Jack's house. When Anna and the photographer head to the hotel, they find someone canceled the booking. He suggests Anna come to his house instead, a place she dislikes. While at his house, she recalls old memories from her birthday, when she, Helen, Rachel, Mary, and Jack's sister walked that same path. That night, some men approached them because of Rachel, and unfortunately, one attacked Mary with Rachel's involvement. At Jack's house, he notices water dripping from the upstairs bathroom. Back with Anna, she arrives at the photographer's house, surprised to find his wife apologizing to her and revealing she canceled the booking. Anna walks around the house and sees photos of the wife, alongside one of Mary, now altered to include Anna's current image. Anna begins to realize she has fallen into a massive trap. Meanwhile, Jack discovers that his sister has been attacked in the bathtub. We finally learn that Mary is actually the journalist who married the photographer after changing her name to hide her identity. She returned to seek revenge on all of them. Flashbacks reveal her past. Her and her sister were pressured during their boat trip. Her sister, sick and fragile, passed away mid-journey. From that moment on, Mary assumed a new identity, planning her long-awaited revenge. Anna immediately realizes she was played by the photographer she thought she was outsmarting. Then she calls Jack and finds him completely shattered as he tells her that his sister is dead. However, at that moment, Anna only wants him to save her. And while she is speaking, the photographer suddenly steps in, letting Jack hear Anna screaming, so he runs at full speed. Meanwhile, on the way, Jack runs into Sean, who stops him because she is convinced he is the killer. However, he manages to trick her, take her gun, and keep going to save Anna. As for Anna, she manages to escape from the real attacker, who is actually being helped by his wife Mary to get revenge on those who hurt her. Then she locks him in a room and confronts Mary, who is shocked when she sees that Anna has pulled out her own tooth with her bare hands, making her feel like she is facing a monster. And eventually, the police arrive with Sean, and just as Mary is about to fire at Anna, Jack saves her. Then Sean shoots Mary in the head, killing her instantly. Later, Anna sits with Jack and tells him everything that happened and that his sister was one of the girls involved with Rachel. Afterward, Anna lives with Jack and her mother, and together, they raise his sister's daughter. Then one day, Anna finds her mother's journals and decides to read them, only to discover the biggest shock of her life when her mother writes, "From the moment you came into my life, Anna, I was proud of you, all the way until you had your daughter, and sadly she was under my protection, yet I failed to save her. And ever since you disappeared, I always found another girl instead of you. And that girl was always Rachel. Then she continues, every day I comforted myself by watching one of the many videotapes I hid in your memory box until I saw your birthday tape. And with my own eyes, I learned what happened to you and how Mary abandoned you and failed to defend you when the boys surrounded you under orders from Rachel, Helen, and Jack's sister. And that is why I decided to take your revenge. But then you came back and saw your husband with the woman who hurt you the most in life. And I wished I could tell you to leave and that I would protect you. And in fact, at that time, after Rachel left Jack, she was still alive. Later, she got out of her car barefoot and kept calling his name after her car ran out of gas. However, that was when Anna's mother appeared and stabbed her 40 times. Then we discovered that she never lost her memory at all. On the contrary, she knew very well that Mary was the famous TV host because Mary was the most shameless of them all, throwing money on the floor while she was cleaning just to make her bend down and pick it up. And since she had spent all those years cleaning for all of them, she knew the locks and the keys perfectly, explaining that no one would ever suspect a woman like her. And we also see that when the police were holding her after the incident, she did not have an accident at all. Instead, she was the one who killed Helen. And even on the day Mary died from a bullet to the back of her head, she was standing there watching them and finally saying, "So I'm the reason for all of this, and your mother took your revenge for you." As for Jack's sister, she had to disappear so that you could have a child and a happy family. And after finishing the reading, Anna looks at her mother's final words, where she writes, "I'm telling you all this because one day you will have a beautiful little girl just like you, and you must love her and love your grandchildren the same way." Then she ends the letter with, "Sincerely."